Hello and welcome to the Harvard Business School application walkthrough session at the application walkthrough event organized by GMAT Club. My name is Melissa Valdivia and I'll be your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce Susan Berishach from Sia Admissions. In this session, we'll walk through the MBA application process for HBS step by step, offering you practical insights on how to prepare a strong application. There will be time for live Q&A, so please submit your questions using the QA tab and feel free to upvote the ones you are most interested in. So let's get started.
Thank you, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I love the participation that I'm seeing here in the chat, so keep those details coming. So today we're going to be talking about the HBS application for the 2025-2026 application cycle, covering exactly what you need to know to craft a standout application. Now, as a reminder, we are going to have an essay discussion on August 12th. So we're not going to dive deeper into the essays per se, but we're going to cover the macro level application itself. I'll share also real client stories to help you understand what it really takes to go from a strong applicant on paper to a really compelling applicant that grabs the attention of the HBS Admission Committee. So our goal for you today is to leave with a bit more clarity on how to put together your HBS application, knowing, of course, that you're going to have a lot more details that you're going to have to put in that is, of course, unique to you and your experience. And of course, for those who want more, we do offer personalized support.
People use the catheter break too.
I think you guys are, your mic is on, if you don't mind muting, please.
If I can read one? I spoiled you. You are not strong.
All right, we'll continue. So I'll show you how we can work together for your application to convert it, of course, from a competitive applicant to a really one that grabs the attention of the HBS Admission Committee. Melissa, are you able to mute?
My family will never find out about this. You will be safe. Our people will be safe.
Guys, if you don't mind, just checking your microphones to make sure you're muted, just because it distracts everyone who is here. Thank you. All right, let's continue. So this is how we're going to structure today's session. First, I'll walk you through the application portal itself. I didn't bring in screenshots just because we don't really need to go page by page, but I do have key points that we'll be discussing. Then we'll talk about why even highly qualified applicants get rejected from HBS. And I'll share insider strategies and client examples. And finally, we'll open the floor to questions. As I present, please feel free to write your questions that you have along the presentation. I don't know about you, but sometimes I think that I can remember everything and then I realize that I can't. So just write the question as they come along. Whether I answer it later on or not, it's okay. We'll go through the questions and obviously we'll see who upvotes which questions so we can make sure that we're answering those that are most pertinent to everyone. All right, so the HBS application is divided into multiple sections. When you create an account, if you haven't already, you'll see that there are so many different tabs associated with different aspects of you and your application to HBS. So everything from personal background to professional history to your post-MBA goals. A few things to highlight is that your post-MBA goals are only 500 characters. And I say that because I see this even with my clients. Oftentimes they confuse characters with words, and 500 characters is about 50 words where you have to communicate what your post-MBA goals are. So what's important for you to know there is that HBS expects a real clear and focused goal that they can quickly read and understand what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. So really make sure that you are putting the most important details in there without going too much into story necessarily. You are required to have 2 recommenders who endorse your application to HBS. And their feedback is, of course, critical to your candidacy. Now, if you're a dual degree applicant, you will have a 3rd letter of recommendation that comes once the interview invite is requested. So keep that in mind if you are applying as a dual degree candidate. We'll have the 3 distinct essay prompts, which are business-minded, leadership-focused, and growth-oriented. And of course, short answer questions that give a bit more color around who you are, how have your life experiences shaped you, and those kinds of details. And of course, we're going to talk through a bit. Through all of these components to make sure that you are putting together an application that is not only focused on repeating what's already somewhere else, but rather giving unique insights that are supportive of other components in your application, but is giving new details for the admission committee to get a better picture of who you are and what you would bring to the HBS cohort in the classroom. So let's look at these short answer questions, which are deceptively simple. And most applicants think that, I'm going to work through essays, and then last minute, I'll just put final details in the application portal. I sometimes have seen applicants, especially reapplicants who shared previous applications, that they wrote C resume in the job description component. Highly discourage going about it that way. These short answer questions are quite important in your overall story, because if you have an over-polished application, essays, and an underdeveloped application portal, then they're going to see that they're like 2 different people, right? That they're presenting themselves. So really important that you map and give yourself space to actually fill out these components. So we're going to start with the employment section, or the employment tab. For those of you who've had only a few jobs, this is great. But for those of you who had multiple jobs, more than 3, this means that you will have to decide which of the 3 jobs you want to highlight in your application portal. So you only have room for 3. HBS then asks you to briefly explain your role without jargon, even though they don't actually specifically say that, but that's your job to make sure you're not including jargon in there. And do not copy paste from your resume. New intel, new insight, new perspective in the way that they should look at your jobs that you've had. You want to share key accomplishments. So look at it from a macro level perspective of what your accomplishments have been. And then you identify most significant challenge. Now, most significant challenge that sometimes applicants erroneously go about presenting is, how hard was something to do? The way I want you to think about this is actually, what was a challenge that helped you grow, that you overcame in your professional setting for that given job, because you have to repeat it 3 times. So think of it more as a growth challenge, not as I had to work long hours and weekends and didn't have a life and all of those things that we know you all have to go through. And what I really want you to remember is that all of these components of your application gives the admission team your first view of you. If they don't resonate, if they can't understand in 30 seconds after reading your application and they're not impressed, you won't get an interview, right? So your job is to have an impressive enough application on all components so that you get to the interview, and then you prepare for the interview and all the components that come after that, including the essay that follows. So if your response is just manage a team of analysts to deliver insight, it's honestly quite flat that anyone that works in a space that there's analysts can talk about. You want to show impact and a little bit of story in here because you have a bit of space. So something that reads more like led a 3-person team to build a market entry strategy that drove 15 million in revenue within 12 months. That is much more interesting. We see the scope, or the admission committee sees the scope of the work that you have done and the impact you were able to create as a result of your work. The next tab is the family tab. This one surprises many applicants because oftentimes they don't know what to write. So HBS gives you space to share context about your background that isn't covered elsewhere in your application. Maybe you're a first-generation college student, maybe you grew up in a multi-generational household, or maybe the context of your experiences shaped your ambitions. This is a place that you can integrate that and use it to your advantage. They give you the space to do it, but use it wisely. Don't just write something that's not that interesting. Use it in a way that's going to help you build a picture of someone who is ambitious and who has gone through a significant amount of personal growth over the years. And then finally, I already mentioned the post-MBA goals, 500 characters that you are to respond to. Most applicants waste this space with a generic statement. I want to transition to consulting to expand my business impact, for example. But HBS does want to see clarity and direction. So make sure that every word that you're including in here is going to be purposeful in your narrative. So bring in, even though it's a post-MBA goal, tie in the long-term impact, the North Star that is guiding your short-term goals. Again, given that you only have 50 words, you have to be very economical with words. These short answers aren't just about data collection. And I know sometimes applicants feel that way because they're completing this information time and again. But I want you to change the mindset in which you look at this. And I want you to think of this as an opportunity for you to build a more complete picture of who you are, what experiences have shaped you. They are not going to sit there and analyze your story. You have to be very purposeful in terms of what you include. And they're also not going to say, well, I wonder if this person has many more interesting experiences. That's really not what they're in the business of doing. Your job as an applicant is to present your best self, best experiences that communicate why you belong at HBS. So make sure that you use the time that you have to develop that story in a way that resonates with them. Because I can't emphasize enough how you approach these application components. It really does make or break your application, irrespective of where you're coming from, what your test scores look like. Now, if you look at the data, about 11% of applicants that apply to HBS get admitted. 89% that apply, who are really strong, they get rejected. So the most common mistakes that I see in applicants that are going through this process is that they write generic essays. Obviously, admission committees can tell when your voice isn't authentic. And they absolutely can tell and are looking to weed out applicants who haven't really been reflective in their applications or in their essays. So they're looking for more than just generic stories. And they're looking for more than just a goals essay. They're looking for transformed leaders who have made some tough decisions along their career. And those tough decisions have made them a better leader, a better teammate, a more impactful steward of the things that matter to them. Your job is to reflect deeply on what those experiences have been for you and communicate those throughout your application. The second kind of mistake that I see applicants make is that they over-rely on numbers. So above average GMAT and GRE scores McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, household name companies. And they think that because, these are obviously, great organizations to work for, very coveted opportunities, that's going to be enough. I will tell you, HBS has an opportunity to admit the best of the best. And they see many McKinsey and Goldman Sachs and Google and Meta and all of these companies, applicants who are vying for a seat at the HBS table. So that's not going to be enough. Your story is what's going to make you unique, and make sure you don't sound like your peer who sits 2 cubicles down from you. You have to be different. Then the third one is fragmented stories. So your goals, experiences, and essays are fragmented, of course. Your job is to weave all of those together into a cohesive narrative so that everything that they read makes sense in the context of your journey, in the context of the journey that you've come from, but also in the context of where you're going. So do pay attention to that. And sometimes when you work in silos, those pieces can be missed. And then finally, surface level recommendation. HBS needs to see depth, character, and conviction in how others advocate for you. That is really important. They are the only voices that they hear about you that is not you. So it's really important that others see you as someone who is deserving to be at HBS. So this is where definitely high caliber candidates benefit from expert guidance, and we bridge the gap between quality and compelling applicants. And if you want to talk about how we can do that, we'll have an opportunity to do so later on. So let me share a story of one of my recent clients. She came from luxury retail, had a philosophy undergraduate degree. So not consulting, not banking, not technology. On paper, she had strong academics, but obviously philosophy is not very quantitative at all, and neither did her job enable her to have a lot of quantitative experiences. In the early draft of her application, her story didn't really stand out. Now, when we work with clients that we say yes to, we say yes to only those individuals we believe we can tell a story. So we knew that there was a story there. So together we focused on what made her irreplaceable. Her deep experience in understanding consumer behavior at the top of the luxury market, and how that translated into her long-term vision of shaping the future of global retail strategy. That was what she was looking to do, and we really tied well her past to her future. And that's, of course, what got the attention of HBS. We used also her short answers to demonstrate leadership in action, her essays to reveal her mission, and her recommendation strategy to back up her character and influence in same alignment with how she was describing herself. So this is definitely the power of getting the story right and tying all the pieces together, not leaving any loose ends, if you will. And even applicants, if there's anything additional that you should get out of this, is that even applicants with unconventional backgrounds or non-traditional backgrounds or gaps in their profile can become highly compelling when they communicate their values and their growth the right way, in a way that, of course, is speaking to the audience, which is, in this case, the HBS Admission Committee. So finally, the essays and recommendations. So this is the heart of the HBS application. And like I said, we're going to talk in more details about this on August 12th. But for now, let's go through what are the essay questions. So HBS has 3 essays. One is business-minded. This is 300 words, where you talk about how your experiences have shaped where you want to go. The leadership focus is focused on what kind of experiences have shaped how you become a leader, and growth-oriented, what opportunities did you take advantage of that had allowed you to grow. The latter 2 are 250 words, and the first one is 300 words. Here's the trap. Most applicants treat these as boxes to check, repeating what's already on their resume, or providing that generic response that a simple question can definitely sometimes trick the applicant who isn't paying attention in the context of the macro level picture you're presenting. The real key is to demonstrate self-awareness, that you have a vision, and that you are impact-minded in these applications. Then, in these essays. Then there is also the optional essay. This is where you have an opportunity to clarify any components in your profile. So if you had a low GPA, if you lost your job for more than 3 months, if there's any extenuating circumstances that you need to describe, but they only give you 75 words to do so. So this is not a bonus essay. This is an essay where you are really just explaining things. And for recommenders, HBS uses the GMAC Common Letter Recommendation format, which have 2 main questions, 1 optional question, and they have a lower than other schools, or lower than Stanford word count on these. So it's 300 for question 1 and 250 for question number 2. The strongest letters don't just confirm that you did your job well, that you are a hard worker, which I often see those words, but really they bring your leadership moments to life with specific stories. One of my clients actually got into HBS largely because how strong her letters of recommendation were about the moment she took charge of a failing project and led her team to win, to a win essentially that saved a $20 million client. So the essays, application portal, letters of recommendation all have to work hand in hand to really tell a story. And this is definitely exactly where most candidates realize they need someone to help them decode what HBS actually wants to hear without scripting them, of course. And that's what we do here at Sia Admissions. We do it really well. We have a 94% placement rate at the moment, which we're really proud of in the context of how closely we work with clients to support them on this journey. So if you are ready to position yourself as a truly compelling HBS candidate, especially those of you who are applying to round 2, we'd love to help. You can scan the QR code if you're on the desktop, or go to siaadmissions.com to request a one-on-one consultation. And this is where we can dive into your specific stories and set up for successful HBS and other M7 and top 10 applications. So now I'd love to hear from you, what questions you have. I think we kept it within 25 minutes, so we have 20 minutes left to answer questions. And I'm sure you have lots of them, so let's dive right in.
Yes, Susan, we already have some couple of questions, so I'll help you with that. So it's a question from Harsh, a question about the letter of reference. What if the recommender doesn't have official mail ID? Can they use their personal Gmail account for the same?
Yes, yes, they can use it. You will have to explain that in your application. So especially if you're not using that 75-word optional essay, you can do it there, where you can, describe why the person doesn't have a professional email address. But they will be, the admission committee will be looking into that, because they don't want your friend to write a letter of recommendation. They actually want someone who has witnessed you in your job.
Great. Now another question. It says, would HBS consider a 3-year BBA degree from India as opposed to the normal 4-year bachelor's degrees in the USA? 4-year BBA degree has only become prevalent in India since the past year only.
I honestly have to check on that. I believe if it's equivalent to a 4-year degree in the United States, then yes. If it's less than a 4-year degree, then no, you may have to take some additional courses to supplement that. I would advise, though, that you reach out to the admission team and clarify specifically your degree, specifically the program that you have attended, to make sure that you don't waste your time going through this process if they don't accept it.
Okay, the next question, it says, how many people should I reach out for input on my app? I was thinking my parents and then 2 close friends as the deadline approaches, maybe a consultant for a final once over.
Yeah. I will challenge that a little bit. I think leveraging your friends and your family, it's excellent because they know you, they know the stories of who you are. However, they are biased individuals because they know you, right? Because they care for you, because they really want the best for you. I would suggest actually going the opposite, the other way. So if you, I would test to make sure first that your strategy is correct, because you don't want to be editing an essay that is wrong from the beginning, right? A coach can't do anything with that, right? So if you reach out to a coach who doesn't know your story very well, which is going to be exactly what the admission committee is going to look at. They don't know you at all, right? Only know what you've prepared for them. They'll be able, and obviously the coach will know also what the HBS is looking for. They will know if you're going in the right direction. Once you have that foundation down, then you can leverage your family and friends to look at the materials over before you hit submit. The application doesn't need to necessarily be perfect, like error-free. I know when I applied to Yale, I was so afraid of that. I got in even though I did make a mistake. So it's okay. But it's really more the question of the underlying story that you're presenting. Is that a strong enough case? And sometimes, especially your family and your friends, whether they have already earned a degree or not, they only know their story and not the collective of what the stories look like across the board.
Great. Now we have another question from Audrey. She says, would different roles in the same company be separate entries?
That's a really great question. It depends on how you want to present them. So this is something that when we work with clients, we discuss, especially if they have multiple roles. We discuss because sometimes they want to highlight components of their jobs that they've held separately, and you can do that. But if you have multiple companies you've worked for, then you're kind of limited to your last job in the company that you've held, multiplied by however many other jobs you've held along the way.
Okay, and there is also a question like right after that one that says, will promotions also be separate entries?
I think that's a similar question. So a promotion would be like from an analyst to a senior analyst to associate or whatever. Yeah. So the same component. It can be separate entries, provided that you have the space to use all 3 sections, meaning you don't have multiple companies that you've worked for.
Okay. So now we have a question from Andre. It says, could I be on the back foot if I don't use AI during my application? I know HBS asked, and it doesn't look like they are framing it as negative.
What's the beginning of the question?
Would I be on the back foot if I don't use AI during my application? I guess they ask on the application.
Would I be like negative? Okay.
Yeah.
I will tell you one of the patterns that I'm seeing in applicants who are using AI is that they are relying too much on AI to do the thinking. AI is great to help you frame things, but it's not the thinking component that is going to be very helpful for your application. And I'm seeing this as a pattern, and is definitely going to be yielding some negative results from those applicants who are heavily relying on AI. So I would say you're not going to be at a disadvantage, which I'm assuming the back foot, what that means. You're not going to be at a disadvantage, provided, of course, that you're a strong writer, right? Sometimes applicants do need that clarity that AI can help with, but the thinking process cannot be done by AI. At least the ones that get in are not relying on AI for that.
Yeah. And there's a similar question about the recommender using ChatGPT because English is her second language. Is it okay for her to use it to correct grammar and sentence structure in the letter of recommendation?
I think that can be okay so long as it stops there and not relying on ChatGPT to do the thinking for them, to do the story development for them, to go go through the depth of what's required to include in a strong letter recommendation. But if for grammar and for sentence structure, especially if English is not their first language, I think that is okay, again, so long as you're not relying on the tool to write everything for you.
Great. Now we have another question from Hassan. How should one prepare for writing the essays? Should we gather stories in one place and then decide which ones fit where?
Yeah, so the story selection process is actually quite multifaceted. You first want to identify your core values, who you are, the transformations that have happened in your life. Identify moments when those transformations were initiated and how that transformation occurred, sort of that journey. And then collect your other stories all together. You look for patterns and then decide which stories make it into the essays. But it's a multi-step process. It's not here's a bunch of stories, let's pick one and write it. It's not really like that. It's really more on the introspection part that you have to do before you even select a story. The story selection is like the easy part.
So now we have this question from Bar. It says, what kind of advice do you have for reapplicants?
Yes, that's a great question. So as a reapplicant, you will have to write an additional reflection piece, which asks essentially what has changed since you last applied. I would only apply if there have been significant improvement, significant growth in your career. For small little changes is not going to be enough. HBS, if you look at the roster of that full spectrum of like GMAT, GRE, if all you've done is increase your test score, that's not enough to be a strong reapplicant. So you need to have grown in your career, worked on something that was really challenging to demonstrate the growth that HBS looks for. So that would be the focus that I would have in your application as a reapplicant.
Kamal Khan says, I have 12 plus years of experience, so what would be your suggestion to consider these cases?
Yeah, definitely more experience than the average candidate. So your job is going to need to demonstrate the growth that you've had over the years, and demonstrate that you are a strong candidate, but not too strong that you are overqualified to be there. So you want to demonstrate also that you have the capability of adding value to the cohort in the discussion. Obviously, the HBS has a 100% case-based learning methodology, so you need to be able to bring a lot of value there. But don't make yourself too strong that they'll say, look for other programs that are executive MBA and not MBA.
The next question is, I have a doubt regarding essays. I was involved in my family business during college, construction industry, for 2.5 years while in college, but then have started working in IT for past 3 years. How will outcomes view this? Can I play this to my strength or weakness?
It's definitely not a weakness, but it can be counted as years of work experience. They are specific about how many years of work experience you have since graduating college. Typically, when you work during college experience, you're not doing a full-time job and going to school full-time. So it's typically a part-time job or can be considered as an internship. So I would use it because it's valuable experience, and I would use it to your advantage, but not as a years of work experience in terms of what it, how it counts. But of course, this also depends on its relevance to your future.
Does HBS require an IELTS TOEFL/TOEFL?
Yes, if you have done a undergraduate in a school that English is not the primary teaching style.
Is it late for round 1 applications with consultants?
Yes. I mean, listen, like a consultant at this point can help you review the final drafts, but at least I can only speak for how we approach things here at Sia. We do a lot of deep dives in getting to know your story and work through the entire scope of the application with you. We walk the journey with you. And 30 days, it's not enough time to go through all the steps that we require applicants to go through to have a compelling application. So how we coach, because our goal is to make sure that you have essentially left no stones unturned in your application, so that you can have optimal results. So that wouldn't, like the comprehensive work wouldn't necessarily be possible at this point with Sia Admissions, but more on the hourly perspective, we can definitely support on that front.
Okay, the next question says, if someone doesn't have the GMAT yet, should they apply round 2 or next year?
Yeah, so HBS only admits applicants that have the GMAT in hand by the deadline. So you can't submit an application if you don't have the score that is obtained at least by the deadline. So you can take round 2 route. You have still time to sit for your GMAT and hopefully get a strong score and apply for round 2, or you can apply next year because HBS only has 2 rounds.
Can one of my recommenders be an ex-colleague as opposed to a recommendation from someone on a senior level? If yes, could this be the best way to highlight my leadership and team building skill?
So the way I read the question is ex-colleague, which means you are on the same level of hierarchy. And if that's the case, no, you cannot use them. They're, what they share is not going to be valuable. They don't have the leadership experience to be able to even evaluate you effectively. They can evaluate you as a peer, like are you a great peer to be, but not what the HBS is looking for. You want someone who has supervised you in some capacity. That could be supervise you as your day-to-day job, or it could be supervise a project that you worked on together, and you reported to them directly. It could be a client, but it cannot be a professor, especially if you're doing the full-time MBA. It cannot be a colleague, subordinate, anyone that doesn't have a higher position than you.
Applying as a younger candidate with 2 years of experience at the time of application, what advice would you have to help show impact through the applications in order to be competitive with older candidates?
Yeah, so this is an excellent question. Applicants with 2 years of work experience, actually, so this would be 3 years of work experience by the time you matriculate, which is how they calculate those. Your job is going to be to demonstrate maturity, demonstrate growth, demonstrate the fact that your leaders see you as someone who has the potential to be a strong leader, and obviously that you've had enough impact in your work experiences thus far. With 2 years of work experience, it sometimes is difficult to be able to demonstrate that. So my suggestion to you is, if you are able to communicate that, apply this year. If you're not able to communicate that, postpone to next year and use this time to strengthen your candidacy before hitting submit. Because as a reapplicant, it's always more challenging to get in.
Is it good to back the story showing characteristics and leadership qualities which we mention in our essays, in our recommenders feedback? And should that be a deciding factor on who should we select as recommender?
The same stories. Not necessarily. You want the stories in your letters of recommendation to communicate how a leader sees you, the experiences that they would consider valuable. There can be an overlap, of course. It doesn't mean like they need net new examples, but the lens through which they're telling the story is different than the lens through which you're telling your story. So that's going to be important. And in the context of if that being a deciding factor on who should be selected as a recommender, so long as they're able to tell stories and your experiences, then yes, that's what you need. I think we have someone who is unmuted. Can you mute yourself, please? Can you just check your camera? Can you check your audio to make sure that you have turned your mic off, please? Thank you. Okay, let's continue to the next question.
Sorry, it's on. I changed my career path from a boutique consulting to an NGO, working with the NGO now. It's grassroots effort. In total, I have Joe is achieving career path a red flag for the outcome. In total, I have 4 years of experience. Sorry. Is achieving career path a red flag for the outcome?
Changing career? No, not at all. So long as it makes sense for your future, that change shouldn't be a negative, because most applicants are also making pivoting careers with an MBA. So that's not negative. But if you say, you worked in consulting, now you worked in NGO, then you're going to work in finance, then after that you're going to work in aerospace, like that just shows like someone who's not really ready for an MBA yet. But so long as you're making connections to the future, then that's not a problem.
Okay, the next one says, I had a question regarding letters of recommendation. Should my letter focus more on my technical skills, or provide a broader overview of my capabilities?
Both, especially if your technical skills are not evident, then you definitely want them to at least weave them, if not talk about them in detail, in the context of how you have use your technical capabilities to make an impact in the organization. However, if you are an engineer, you do not need to emphasize that. Your recommender does not need to emphasize that, because that's your day-to-day job. And then the focus is going to be more on the leadership, communication, the things that someone may misunderstand about your career, that is important for business school.
Okay, so just one quick last question. Can you rank the most important thing in application rank-wise?
Great question. I have a hard time ranking things because I can see pros and cons on all things. But I would say I will do the 2 things that are most important in the application. 3 things for an application. I would say, of course, having a compelling resume. It's really important, and one that is jargon-free, MBA-focused resume, because that gives the scope of the kind of work and the kind of impact you've had over X number of years, however many you have. Second thing is telling your stories, which is, of course, the transformation that you would never see on a resume. And those 2 complement one another. And they're needed, because if you have an excellent resume and not an excellent essay, it's not going to it's not going to be compelling for the admission team, right? They want to see that you've had excellent experiences, and also they want to see that you are someone who has had transformations on a personal level that has impacted how you show up externally. And then, of course, the third one is the letters of recommendation, because we need external validators that you are someone who you say you are, that other people see you in the same way you see yourself, or even better than you see yourself. And we want, you want your recommenders to be really excited about endorsing you, because they play a huge role in that decision-making process. So that's the rank.
you so much, Susan.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thank you.
all for joining the HBS session at application walkthrough, and we hope to see you in the next sessions and in our future events. And you can contact Susan for more, and to answer all your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for wonderful questions. Sorry we didn't get through all of them. But you know, bring the same questions again on August 12th when I'll be hosting the essay portion.
Great. That's great to know. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.